Firstly, let me acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of Canada Bay, the Wongal clan, one of the 29 tribes of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend this respect to all Aboriginal people living in and visiting the city of Canada Bay, and those who may be viewing this presentation. My name is Janine McKenzie, and I'm from Morrison Low. We're a specialist consulting firm that has been engaged by the City of Canada Bay to review its financial position and help ensure its long-term financial sustainability. This is a recorded presentation of the presentation provided at a number of public forums in September of 2022 on the special rate variation. The purpose of those public forums and of this presentation is to inform you of the proposed special rate variation and the reasons for it. Whilst at the forums you would have been able to ask questions, unfortunately, as this is a recorded presentation, there won't be that opportunity, but as I go through the presentation, I will point you to where and how you might seek to find more information about the special rate variation and how you might be able to raise and have your questions answered. Hopefully at the end of this presentation you will be more informed around the special rate variation and be able to form and express your views on it. I will cover today the Council's current financial position, the proposed SRV and what it will be used for, the proposed increase to minimum rates and the reasons for it, the impact of all this on average rates across the different rating categories, and I will also provide a little bit more information around the SRV process and next steps. What won't be covered in this presentation is anything on the Council's delivery program or community strategic plan. The forums that were undertaken were not to make a decision around the SRV or whether to apply for it, but I will cover off at the end of this presentation the decision-making process that will be made by the Council as they go through the deliberations around the SRV. Firstly, I just wanted to reflect on the requirements under the Local Government Act for councils to manage and apply sound financial management principles. Section 8B of the Act requires council to ensure that spending is responsible and sustainable, and that they align general revenue with expenses. Financial sustainability in local government has a number of elements. Firstly, it's ensuring a fully funded operating position. So in business parlance, that would be a profit and loss component that's ensuring that revenues are sufficient to cover expenditure. It's also a requirement of council to maintain sufficient cash reserves. That is, cash reserves that enable them to fund their ongoing operations. Councils also must ensure that they have a fully funded capital program. So that is that all the projects that they have planned for renewing or building new assets are funded, and that the source of the funds for those projects are clear and identified. And it is also a program that ensures that council is able to maintain its asset base at fit for purpose standards. So that is making sure that they're sufficiently investing in their assets so they don't deteriorate over time. Council also has an obligation to ensure that it has adequate resources to meet its ongoing compliance obligations. Councils have a number of different compliance obligations under the Local Government Act, but also under a number of other state legislation. These Requirements and principles are not negotiable for councils. Failure to meet these obligations can lead to the New South Wales Office of Local Government and the Minister intervening, and we have seen a number of examples of that occurring in the past. So for councils, it's important to ensure that they balance the expenditure, the resources that they have against the services that they deliver. So on the one hand, council has to ensure that it manages under sound financial management principles, that it keeps, it covers the revenue covers the expenditure that it outlays, but it also has an obligation to ensure that it is providing the services and the service levels that the community expect. And that can be quite challenging for councils, similar to Canada Bay, that have experienced significant growth in the past. And also, as Canada Bay is thinking about its financial future, it has to be cognizant of the fact that it has some significant growth planned in its future. So current projections indicating that population growth over the next 15 years in Canada Bay will be around 30%. So what does this mean for the future forecast of its financial position for Canada Bay? Well, the long-term financial plan base case shows a consolidated view where deficits move from surpluses from 2024 onwards. But underneath that, and when we unpack it, council has two main funds that it operates. One is its domestic waste fund, which funds obviously its domestic waste services. The other is its general fund, and that fund covers all of the other services that council provide. Sitting underneath the consolidated view of its long-term financial plan is a domestic waste fund that shows strong or relatively strong surpluses throughout the 10 years, and a general waste fund which is somewhat offset by that in the consolidated view, a general fund which is somewhat offset in the consolidated view of persistent deficits over the 10 years. This base case view includes the forecasted rate peg of 3.25% in the 2023-24 year and 2.5% thereafter. The rate peg generally, historically, doesn't keep up with the cost increases that councils experience, and that has become, it is a typical challenge for councils. So this view where we see a deterioration in the general fund is not unique to Canada Bay. That is, a challenge that many councils face. And for the City of Canada Bay, one way that they have managed that in the past, or the main way they have managed that in the past, is to find and look for savings, efficiencies, productivity gains within the delivery of its current services. Most recently, in 2018, Council reviewed all of its services, and through that process was able to implement about $1.7 million in annual savings. In the current financial year, 2022-23, it has identified $415,000 of savings that it will implement. And going forward, the Council has a program of service reviews and continuous improvement that will continue to look for and implement productivity and efficiency savings. They, unlike many other councils, this has been the only way that Canada Bay has managed its challenge around that increasing costs outpacing increasing revenues. Most other councils within New South Wales have at some stage applied for what we call a special rate variation. That is a process that IPART, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, run, which enables councils to apply for a rate increase that is over and above the set rate peg. So this proposal for Canada Bay will be the first, if it's approved, will be the very first special rate variation that Canada Bay has experienced. At the same time, Council has also identified the need for further investment in some priority services and asset areas to both improve and expand services and to lay a solid foundation for the organisation going forward. These proposed increases are in a number of different areas. In strategic planning to ensure that they're able to meet their commitments under a number of different state-led strategies. In development assessment to be able to cope with the increased volume of development applications and speed up assessment time. In parks and recreation to expand facilities, inspections, maintenance, tree maintenance and management. In roads and traffic to deliver additional maintenance and cleaning. In community strategies and services to improve community safety, cultural planning, biodiversity, sustainability, climate change and other community services. In corporate services to enhance systems and processes for internal audit, risk management and business improvement, including standing up and continuing an audit risk and improvement committee, which is a requirement now under the Local Government Act and regulations. In asset maintenance to improve the maintenance and building of assets. Sorry, maintenance of buildings and assets. The total expenditure, increase in expenditure to deliver these improved services is approximately $5 million per year. In addition to that, on the asset side, Council has identified the need to increase some of its capital expenditure by about $3.3 million, and that includes in areas to renew roads, footpaths, street lighting, seawalls and drainage, as well as community buildings and facilities such as swimming pools, libraries, parks, etc. It also includes a modest investment in information technology to ensure that their IT assets are being renewed going forward, and that would mean that a total increase in services and asset expenditure would result in $8.3 million of increased costs per annum. In order to fund this and also to address the deficits in the general fund, Council is proposing a special rate variation of 17.78% over and above the forecasted rate peg that the community would otherwise receive. That in total or otherwise pay, I should say, and that in total means that the forecasted cumulative increase from special rate variation is 32.52%. So what does this mean for residents? For a residential property, the median is about $1.5 million. So we've looked at a $1.5 million land value property. Their rates would increase in total over the 4-year period of $6.58. That's $3.31 over and above the projected increase that would come from the rate peg alone. When we compare this to other similar councils, we can see that it doesn't bring Canada Bay it's not the lowest, nor is it the highest. It's a relatively competitive still, even with the increases. The Office of Local Government groups councils into different numbered groups that are similar in terms of the types of councils that they have, and for Canada Bay, that is Group 3. And we can see from the diagram here that the Group 3 average is slightly lower. So Canada Bay is very much on average for its group office from the Office of Local Government grouping. As rates are calculated on land value, unimproved land value, there can be a significant difference between the rates calculated for a freestanding home on a block as opposed to that of a unit. And these differences don't generally reflect not the difference in the people who live in those homes' capacity to pay, nor does it reflect the costs of the services that council provide to both of those types of owners. As the City of Canada Bay continues to see growth, it sees a greater proportion of that growth through residential unit developments as opposed to home developments or freestanding houses. So as we are looking towards the future in terms of the growth that we're going to see in Canada Bay, we must have a look at the minimum rates so that we can ensure that the services can be extended to these new developments while they don't disproportionately increase the rate burden to single house dwellings. Council is proposing an increase in its minimum rate of $250 over and above the forecasted rate peg. So when we include the rate peg, this equates to $346.46 over the 4-year period. That's taking the current minimum rate to $761.61 to $1,108.07 in 2026-27. What does this mean for those people on the minimum rate? So budgeting weekly for a minimum rate householder would need to increase its budget by $6.67 a week. That's $4.82 more than it would have paid, or we expect it would have paid, with just the forecasted rate peg alone. Again, not all councils have minimum rates, so we've had to compare Canada Bay to a number of similar councils that do have minimum rates. The City of Canada Bay is again, with the rate increases sitting in the middle of the pack. There's not a lot of variation around the amount of minimum rates are set at in the Sydney metropolitan area, as you can see from this diagram, but it does allow, these increases do allow Canada Bay to bring themselves up to a similar standing to other similar councils in the area. In terms of the proposed special rate variation for businesses, so looking at a business land value of $1.2 million, the proposed variation would equate to a total increase per week for business ratepayers of $12.55 per week over at the end of the 4-year special rate variation increase. This is $6.30 more than what it would be paid if it were over and above that forecasted rate peg. So again, when we look at comparing Canada Bay's average business rates with other similar councils, you can see that even with the special rate variation, Canada Bay's business rates remain significantly lower than the average for Group 3, which Canada Bay is in, and other comparable councils. We can see that there's probably one outlier here, which would be Hunters Hill. Hunters Hill has a significantly lower, again, rate for businesses, but it is probably worth pointing out that Hunters Hill has a very small contingent of business ratepayers in its local government area. In terms of what this means and what the special rate variation means to council or for council, you can see from the diagram here that what it does mean is that that general fund deficit that we talked about at the beginning is actually turning into a modest surplus. When we take it as a percentage of the total revenue that the council receives for operational revenue the council receives, it allows council to have a ratio of about between 3 and 4% over that 10-year period. So that that is taking council from what is not a sustainable position in its general fund to a sustainable position as far as an operating performance goes. So that concludes what the basis of the information provided on the proposed special rate variation for Canada Bay in the public forum. This piece is now talking about the process around the special rate variation application. So in September and October of 2022, this is the period which the council is consulting with its community and informing on the special rate variation. In November, council will consider all of the submissions that have been provided through that process and will decide whether to proceed and apply for a special rate variation. If they do decide to move to the next step and apply for the special rate variation, the application will be lodged in February or around February 2023. And that application will be lodged to IPART. IPART then undertakes its own process and invites submissions on the proposed special rate variation in the process of evaluating any application. And that will occur in March and April of 2023. In May of 2023, IPART will make its determination, and from that, Council will determine if it will apply all or part of any approved special rate variation. In terms of the criteria that IPART look at, these criteria are set by the Office of Local Government, and there are generally 5 main criteria that IPART apply to any special rate variation application. Firstly is the need and purpose of the special rate variation or the different rate paths for Council's general fund, that it's clearly articulated and identified in Council's IPNR documents. That there's evidence that the community is aware of the need for and the extent of the rate rise, that the impact on affected ratepayers is reasonable, that the relevant IPNR or integrated planning and reporting documentation, including Council's delivery plan and long-term financial plan, have been exhibited, approved and adopted, and include the analysis around the SRV and the reasons for it. And that Council has also done the work to ensure that it has made the productivity and cost containment improvements that it needs to ensure that they've done what they can to keep rates as low as possible, or that they have a plan or that they have a plan to do so. And there's always a sort of 6th criteria, which is any other matter that IPART considers relevant. In most recent years, that has been the effect of COVID-19, particularly around the community consultation process for a special rate variation. For you to have your say or to find out more information around the special rate variation, the City of Canada Bay has established a site on its Collaborate Canada Bay website that goes into a lot more information around the impacts and the amount and how it's applied of the special rate variation. So going into the Collaborate Canada Bay site, there is a SRV page that you will be able to see. There is also there a number of frequently asked questions to help guide you in terms of some of the things that we know people are asking. And also an opportunity, that is also the area where you can go if you want to make a submission. So there's links in that Collaborate Canada Bay page for you to make a submission on the updated long-term financial plan, and also the special rate variation. That concludes the presentation that was provided to the public forums. There was a opportunity at this point for the participants of those public forums to ask questions. Unfortunately, we can't do that with a recorded session, but if you do have questions, by all means, there's an opportunity to raise any concerns or questions either by calling Council, the City of Canada Bay, on 9911 6555, or emailing council@canadabay.nsw.gov.au. Thank you for listening, and I hope that this presentation has been informative. Thank you.